right, my food moon friends, welcome back. Chandra Zas, Zen Odyssey, healing guts. It is, wow, so fun for me. All right, so this month we are focusing on relationships, and this week I am going to talk specifically about blame. What happens when we blame other people? What happens when we're in a blaming mood, when we're taking on the behavior and acting in a blaming way? So when we blame other people, what we're doing is we're giving away our power. We are making ourselves little, and we're saying that it's the other person's fault. And when we blame other people, most of the time they're defensive, they're reactive, they're not open, and they're not in a space of figuring it out with us and even giving us what we want. This happens all the time. We are in a culture and we have learned how to be, it's something that little kids do. Like, there's a concept of emotional childhood versus emotional adulthood. And I think blame is one of the easiest ways to understand these two differences. When we're acting like emotional children, we are blaming other people, the world, for how we feel, for whatever's happened. We're blaming and we're powerless. And when we act like emotional adults, we are taking responsibility. We are owning our part. We are having the bigger, more adult conversation of like, hey, look, I see it this way. This is where I made a mistake. Hey, we have this problem. How can we work this out? Yesterday, I have a good blaming story. My partner and I, even though I know about this, and even though blaming is something that we actively talk about in our relationship and we're really working on, we're also working on modeling for our little one, we still get caught up in the blame game. And we just had our truck come out of the shop after a giant, enormous, expensive repair. And the truck came home with a new problem. And we both wanted to blame the company that just worked on our truck for the new problem. And we started to call them in this kind of like blaming energy of like, it's your fault. What did you do? You need to fix this. And I caught us because blame is one of the energies, blame is actually an action. It's something that we do and we blame someone else. But there's always an emotion behind that action. So, blame is kind of like, what does blame feel like? Blame feels like I'm getting ready to like fight. I'm getting ready to make justice. Like I'm in this kind of like attack mode of like, hey, you did something wrong and you need to fix it. So we were about to call our truck company and blame them for what was happening. And I luckily caught us and I was like, look, love, I was like, we're kind of in a blaming mood and this isn't going to be useful. They're not going to receive us well. They're not going to help us. They're not going to be able to problem solve with us. Like, let's take a deep breath and let's call them and get curious and ask them what they know and pick their brains and get on their team with solving whatever new issue we have with our truck. And luckily my partner's amazing and he was like, you're right. Okay, let's, blaming is not useful. It's not going to get us what we want. And so you're right. Let's call them with a different energy. Let's call them and see what they know and see what we can figure out together. And we speaking of our relationship, we also we're both really strong-headed and we're both like really, certain that we're right a lot. And when we're in that space, we can easily blame each other for something going wrong, something that's kind of our shared responsibility and something didn't go right. So it's obviously the other person's fault. And it's something that we're really actively working on. And so we flag it and we're like, okay, wait a minute, we're in that blame energy again. And even back to the beginning of our relationship, when I was living in Israel with him, and the language barrier was bigger, his English was not nearly as good as it is now, and there was many, many times where he said things, and because of the language difference, and I really feel like it was a big gift at this point, our language difference. I was constantly asking him, is this what you meant to say? And sometimes I would ask him like 5 different questions, just getting to the point of like, did you mean to say it this way? And is this what you mean by what you said? And I think these couple of questions are gold to bring into any relationship. Because when we assume what someone else says or does, when we assume it, we're missing a piece. And just pausing and asking these couple questions with curiosity and openness and wanting to really understand the other person before fighting back and before rebuttaling and before, going into this mode, but to stop and ask questions. Did you mean this? Because sometimes we even say something, but we actually didn't really mean what the words came out as. And this little practice to take into any relationship, to take into any dynamic, whether even if it's romantic, friends, family, with service industries, asking these couple of questions and getting on the same page is one of the most softening and connecting ways to have a conversation, to work through differences, to get on the same page, to really, and I like to call it a lot in my relationship, I call it getting on the same side, getting on the same team. There's times where I feel like we get really across from each other and we're battling against each other, and I'm like, look, love, we're not on the same team right now. Like, we're on the same team. How can we get back to the place where we're side by side and facing whatever challenge is out in front of us? And it's this has been the backbone of our relationship, is really standing side by side. And whenever we notice we're across from each other, ready to battle, like, how can we get back to the same page and back to facing whatever challenge or differences it is that we have? It's a big game changer, doing this mental shift and flagging blame and pausing and questioning is a really useful tool for relationships. And of course, blame is one of those negative emotions. So blame, I still stick by it. Blame is an action, but when we're blaming, we're not feeling good. We're feeling like we're attacking, we're feeling in fight mode, we're feeling angry, we're feeling like we want to make things fair. And it can be a useful emotion if you use it the right way. But if you're blaming the world for everything, you can get into a place of victimhood, and you can get into a powerless place, and you can feel like an emotional child. And when you're in that place, your systems are not running right. It's okay to go there from time to time, but if you're living in that space, it can really erode your health and erode your gut health. So this is why, for me, the food and the mood are so critical to gut health, because it's really these two components. We really need to clean up our food, and we really need to clean up our emotions. And blame is one of the big emotions that, when we clean it up and when we understand what's happening and why we're in a blaming mood and what the ramifications and how the detriment is to our health and to our relationships, because it's all connected. All right, so let's get the food and mood game going. Let's flag that blame and bring in that curiosity. Bring in those questions. Is that what you mean? Did you mean to say it this way? Did you mean that when you said that? Gold for any relationship. I hope that you find a way to incorporate it into a relationship that you want to start taking some of the blame out and start becoming an empowered person, an empowered partner, an empowered friend in whatever dynamic it is that you are working on and working in and living in and wanting to love in. All right. Have a beautiful week. Thank you so much.